Batman is the modern equivalent of a Shakespearean character. Strap in while I tell you why. Macbeth, Romeo, Hamlet, Ophelia, King Duncan. What comes to mind when you hear these names? High drama, rich themes, violence, love, hate, power, literature, and theater are all great answers. Shakespeare has been the epitome of entertainment for as long as America has been a country. His name has become an adjective used to quantify the quality of a piece of literature, like I am doing in this episode. Now think about these names: Dick Grayson, Commissioner James Gordon, Alfred Pennyworth, and Bruce Wayne. What comes to mind for them? Theatrics, rich themes, violence, love, hate, heroism, comic books, and pulp entertainment. Batman is one of the top contenders in the debate of the best superhero of all time, and is one of the most recognizable characters in all of fiction. The world of Gotham and its inhabitants are easily the most iconic in all of comic book. There is considerable overlap in the two lists of descriptors, but the similarities do not end there. A myriad of parallels can be connected to Shakespeare's literary and theatrical works and the character of Batman. I mean, tell me Macbeth cursing a man as an egg before stabbing him is that different than men dressed as bats and clowns? I would go so far as to say that Batman is America's most famous fictional character, but that is a separate argument entirely. For now, let's take a look at Shakespeare and Batman. William Shakespeare is undoubtedly the most famous playwright of all time. How many of his plays can accurately be attributed to him has always been debated, but 36 can be found in the first folio and 100% be attributed to him. A collection of all his plays published 7 years after his death, the first folio does not include collaborations or lost plays. These touch on a wide variety of topics and, as most plays in that era, were divided into two distinct camps, determined on their ending, comedy and tragedy. Shakespeare was not always considered the highbrow theater it is today, however. It took around a century for them to be revered the way they are today. Prior to this, they were considered paupers' plays. These plays were some of the only theatrical works to survive a Puritan ban on public stage performances. In the mid-17th century, literary students and authors began to re-examine the texts themselves, triggering Shakespeare's rise. Hundreds of adaptations have been made since then, ranging from film to television to the stage. The two plays I did in high school were both Shakespeare, actually. Batman was created by writer Bill Finger and artist Bob Kane. He was intended to be a scientific, noir detective superhero inspired by characters such as Sherlock Holmes, the Green Hornet, and the Shadow. His look, primarily the cape and cowl, was inspired by Leonardo da Vinci's flying machine, and he was originally decked out in red with a domino mask, essentially Robin's look. At first, the character was a dark vigilante who maimed or even killed criminals. One of my favorite panels where this happens is found in Detective Comics number 27, his first appearance. In it, Batman punches a man into a vat of chemicals, not the Joker, completely killing this guy. The guy who was protecting is standing behind him, and he's like, "What the hell?" And Batman just says, "A fitting end for his kind." Insane. As time went on, the writers introduced Robin so children would have someone to identify with, and the expansion of Batman's lore was officially started. Batman went through many iterations over the decades, ranging from a campy, silly hero to a brooding, conflicted, dark vigilante. World events often determined how uplifting Batman's personality would be, which in turn determined the rest of the story. After World War II, audiences were looking for a more happy-go-lucky superhero, so Batman changed. And the 60s television series was incredibly popular, with the biggest actors of the time clamoring to be on it. The 1989 film was similarly considered prestigious, particularly when Jack Nicholson signed on as the Joker. Since then, Batman has had the most live-action adaptations, to say nothing of the TV shows, video games, novels, and comic books. He became the first superhero to earn a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in September 2024. At the University of Victoria in Canada, a class called The Science of Batman was offered, and it focused on the extreme adaptability of the human body explored through the life of the Caped Crusader. Batman may not be your favorite superhero, but he is undoubtedly the most prolific. I doubt anyone was unaware of Batman and Shakespeare's fame, but this brings me to my first point. The parallels between these two fictional properties are immense because they are one and the same. Batman is simply the modern version of Shakespearean drama. Besides all of the technical similarities and the similar trajectory they have followed in the culture, they also contain striking similarities in their writing. Both contain the following: masks and deception, mistaken identity, a wide variety of approaches and adaptations, internal conflict, a large cast of characters, interesting relationship dynamics, controversy around the creators, and they were initially seen as lowbrow. The Dark Knight has long been considered one of the most complex, deep, and interesting superheroes. He has an incredibly rich backstory full of iconic characters with a certain degree of complexity in the plotting. His parents' death and his subsequent pledge to fight crime are both inherently dramatic. Batman further plays out this internal conflict in his adoption of several Robins. His relationship with the police, his villains, Alfred, romance, and his vow are the source of conflict in the Batman mythos. A constant tension with Batman is present throughout all his stories. Psychology and philosophy are ingrained in the character and his world, with all of his villains being reflections of him. Shakespearean characters have deep emotional lives, intense drama with both the external and internal, and are scaled up to epic proportions. Romantic tension is a big part of these stories, as well as parental dynamics. Psychology and philosophy are big aspects of these stories, and violence is often a large factor as well. The supernatural plays a large role in both properties. Witchcraft, folklore, and the afterlife are essential parts of Shakespeare's plays. The extreme fantastical nature of Batman and his villains, excluding everything else from DC, are essential parts of the legend of Batman. Both Hamlet and Bruce Wayne are haunted by the ghosts of their fathers, literally in the case of Hamlet. Fairies, witches, storms, and prophetic illusions are present in Shakespeare's work, and one of Batman's villains is kept immortal by a pit he frequently takes a dip in. Solomon Grundy and Clayface are also quite supernatural in their origins and characterizations. Alfred can be considered a stand-in for the Fates, who typically advise the hero of Shakespearean plays or warn him. He can also be seen as a stand-in for the audience, wherein Batman delivers soliloquies to Alfred. Coincidentally, a bust of Shakespeare can be found in Wayne Manor in the 1966 show, The Game Arkham Knight, and the film The Batman. In the show, the head flipped back to reveal a button that opens a secret passageway. I think it's also interesting that the Waynes are leaving a performance of some kind whenever they're killed. It is typically the film The Mark of Zorro, but it has also been an opera or a play. A parallel that probably means nothing, but that I like, is what I call the 90s magnum opus. In the 1990s, adaptations widely considered to be the best were made for both. Batman the Animated Series, considered the best on-screen adaptation of Batman ever by many, and Kenneth Branagh made a number of Shakespearean films that are considered the standard for Shakespeare on film, both in the 1990s. Both Shakespeare and Batman can be adapted for different eras and backdrops. It is almost a cliche at this point to place a Shakespearean play in an alternate period, and Batman has been to the future, Victorian England, the modern US, 1940s US, and more. The stories are malleable and timeless enough to transcend period and setting. Solomon Grundy and Julius Caesar were both pre-existing people/characters before they were incorporated into Batman and Shakespeare respectively. Solomon Grundy is the subject of an English poem from the 1840s, and Julius Caesar is a real-life political figure. Finally, Romeo and Juliet and Batman's origin are two of the most well-known fictional stories of all time. I struggle to think of more prolific pieces of fiction than these. You could argue the Greek myths are up there, but many are not familiar with them to that degree. Everyone knows the story of the tragic lovers, however, and you would have to go quite far to find someone who does not know how Bruce Wayne became Batman. The influence of both is immense, and not only theater and comics, but fiction as a whole. Without the plays of Shakespeare, the modern English language would be unrecognizable from what it is today, and certain subgenres would not exist, such as the romantic tragedy. Countless authors have also been influenced, as have many films. Batman has changed multiple industries for the better. Superman the movie was released in 1975, and Howard the Duck in 1986. The former was beloved and incredibly lucrative, but the sequels were largely a step down, and neither inspired more comic book adaptations. But in 1989, the Batman film was the first serious comic book film kicking off the genre. This ended up changing the cinematic landscape for better or for worse. It proved that comic book films could be both profitable and taken seriously. Thusly, studios wanted to begin adapting comic books for the silver screen. Batman, more than any other superhero, has become a mythical figure. A big difference between the two, however, is the memorable quotes that they have birthed. Shakespeare is responsible for many phrases and sayings, but Batman has fewer memorable lines. Of course, he has "I'm Batman." Criminals are a cowardly, superstitious lot.
I am vengeance. I am the night. I am Batman.
But 3 lines are hardly comparable to the dozens Shakespeare can claim. This does speak to my point, though, because what superhero has 1 famous saying, let alone 3? A few, but not many, and certainly not on Batman's level. Similarly, Batman has a specific lore that does not change that much from writer to writer. In the comic industry, writers typically have free reign over the story during their run. They have no obligation to respect past stories, so they largely do not. The specifics of Spider-Man, Iron Man, Superman, Wonder Woman, or any other character can change from writer to writer, but with only the origin staying intact the majority of the time. But with Batman, not only the origin, but also many plot beats are respected or fleshed out or expanded upon. The fall of Harvey Dent, the Robins, the paralyzing of Barbara Gordon, and Batman's no-killing rule are all aspects and moments of the character that really don't change. It can be adapted and played around with, but the core stays the same. The same goes for Shakespeare, whose plays stay pretty close to the original intention and story while being adapted endlessly. The Killing Joke, A Death in the Family, Nightfall, The Long Halloween, The Dark Knight Returns, Batman Year One, and Batman Hush are all stories that contain the elements we have been discussing. There is such gravitas, pathos, theatricality, and rich emotional drama present in these stories. Macbeth, Hamlet, Julius Caesar, Romeo and Juliet, and Othello are all stories with deep emotional cores, over-the-top theatricality, and relationship dynamics that determine the course of the story. Intense drama is synonymous with Shakespeare permeating his storytelling landscape. What, or rather who, is at the center of these stories? Characters. It is all character. What matters the most in Hamlet? Hamlet's internal struggle. What matters most in Batman the Killing Joke? Batman's fight to maintain his moral compass. Is Romeo and Juliet really about class warfare and warring families? No. It is about the love Romeo and Juliet have for each other. Is Batman Year One really about the fight against crime in Gotham? No. It is about Bruce Wayne finding his identity as Batman. The only thing that really matters are the characters. The characters all play off each other and drive the conflict forward because of their differences. Macbeth, ruthless, deceitful, low in status, is the opposite of King Duncan, assuming, trusting, higher in status. Octavius, young, idealistic, loyal, is the opposite of Brutus, obsolete, pragmatic, traitorous. Every single Batman villain plays off his character in a certain way. The Joker's worldview is the opposite of Batman's. Catwoman challenges his sexuality, if you can really call Catwoman a villain, which I don't think you can. Two-Face's duality gone too far. Mr. Freeze is a warning and going too far in protecting a loved one. The Penguin represents the corrupt Gotham elite and is a nice parallel to the Waynes, who is also a long-running Gotham family who are not corrupt. The ultimate conflict will always center around the fate of the characters, and this makes both works timeless and endlessly captivating. The works of William Shakespeare and the world of Gotham City are the pinnacle of what fiction can do to the culture. Both have impacted the culture in an irrevocable way and influenced people's lives every single day. A man standing on a rooftop dressed as a bat, looking over his city, and a boy delivering a sonnet on love represent the same quandary. Batman and William Shakespeare both explore the same universal, intriguing concept: human beings.